Hello, friends. This is Justin Jones with the Whitney Area Chamber of Commerce. I have a special guest here today, Mr. Don Rawls. Don, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I am the executive director for CASA of Hill County, Texas. That's a position that I came to 2 years ago in November of 2018. In 2018, a steering committee was formed in Hillsboro of citizens throughout the county, and their goal was to start a new CASA program. They formed a new corporation, started the process of looking for a executive director in order to run the program. And they started in February, and they had an informational meeting, had about 20 or 25 citizens throughout the county who came to that informational meeting. And then it took them until May before they actually formed the corporation. And then in September, they joined Texas CASA as a new startup CASA program.
Mm-hmm.
We are the 72nd of 72 programs in the state of CASA programs in the state of Texas.
Wow.
And so we are their newest program.
Well, tell us a little bit about CASA. What does that stand for?
Well, a lot of people think it's about a house, and it's not. CASA, C-A-S-A, stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates.
Okay.
And so we recruit and train and then support volunteers who are individuals from all walks of life throughout the county who will, after their training, be sworn in by the judge, the local judge, Judge Matt Crane, and then they will be assigned a case of a child that's in foster care. And their job is to do their own research, to understand the facts of the case, and to make an opinion about what is in the best interest of the child.
Mm-hmm.
So CASA advocates are always focused on the best interest of the child. Unlike attorneys that have to represent their client, we don't. And oftentimes, that's why CASAs become invaluable to the particular cases that we're involved in. Because if you have an attorney with a teenage child who says, I want to go home, then he has to advocate for that with the judge. But if that's not a safe place for that child to go back home to, we could advocate for the fact that that's not in the child's best interest. And we can look for other family members, friends, relatives, other folks that might be a better place for that child to be at that particular time.
What is your role as the executive director?
Well, originally I wore all the hats. So it was my job to do not only the administration, but the recruiting, the training, the supervising of all of the volunteer advocates. And we started in 2018, we had one volunteer advocate that came over from the previous CASA program that had been here, and that was Dr. Byer. And so we had one volunteer and a whole lot of kids on the court's caseload.
How many children do y'all work with?
Well, right now we are serving 47 children with 34 volunteers.
Oh, wow.
And so in that 2-year period of time, we have found 34, and we have found and trained 34 people that are willing to do this work as CASAs and work with these children to find out what's in their best interest.
What kind of retention do you have with your volunteers?
So far, our retention has been really good. We're relatively new. So in the 2-year period of time, we've only lost one volunteer who did not feel like he could continue. We have a couple right now that, because of life situations, are sort of on hold, and will be hopefully taking cases in the near future. But so far, of all the people that we've recruited, we've only lost one.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
So it is. So, and we're pretty excited about that. We're excited about the response that we've received from individuals who are willing to volunteer. To be a CASA volunteer, you have to be 21 years old. You have to be able to pass background checks. You have to do a 30-hour training program. And prior to COVID, we did those trainings at our office in the evenings, or maybe a daytime training. And it was 6 classes of 2 hours each. And then there's the balance of that. 6 classes of 4 hours each. And then the balance of that 6 to 8 hours was homework that they had to work on, things that they had to do. With COVID, we now do all of those via Zoom, and we do them with an 1.5 to 2 hour class. And unfortunately, volunteers have a lot more homework that they have to work on and do, but it allows them the flexibility to do it on their own time, in the evenings or on weekends or during the day, depending on how their schedule fits. And then once they've finished that 30-hour training, then they're sworn in by the judge and they'll start their case.
Is there a certification process or a test involved towards the end, or is it
No.
you complete training and you're...
Yes, you complete the training, and then, as with most things, you will learn a lot on the job as you go through. And that's why we have staff that support them. So you asked me about what I did. Originally, it was just me. In September of 2019, I hired a part-time supervisor who helped me work with volunteers on their cases. And that gave me a little bit more time to recruit. Then in May of 2020, we hired a recruiter / supervisor. She supervises a small caseload, but her primary function is to recruit. And she does a bang-up job. And she has Facebook postings. You'll see our Facebook page, CASA of Hill County, Texas. She does a good job of getting us postings out there every week, and she changes it up. So provides information, a listing of current events, and then of course always asking for folks who would be willing to volunteer on a case.
Can you explain a little bit about the funding and how CASA is funded?
Sure. Well, originally we were funded with a startup grant from Texas CASA. And then there are 2 major grants that Texas CASA administrates for all of the CASA programs throughout the state. One is VOCA, which is the Victims of Crimes Act, and the other is CVC, which is Crime Victims Compensation. And so those 2 funds provide most of our funding to handle the largest majority of our expenses that we have. In addition, we obviously are always looking for contributions from the general public. And when we first began here, there was a purse bingo event that was held in August. And along with the CAC out of McLennan County, we put that purse bingo on, and then the CAC and CASA will split those funds, and that provides the largest majority of our funding.
And then, do y'all currently have any fundraisers? Do y'all do those throughout the year to help offset some of those grant things from the state level, I guess?
Well, as our budget continues to grow and as we add on more staff, more volunteers, yes, we are going to have other fundraising events. The board is currently in discussion now about the possibility of having another fundraising event besides the Purse Bingo in order to be able to provide some additional funds. Because we're an early startup, and when we first started, I was the only employee. It was possible to do a lot with just a little bit of funding. But as we continue to grow, and right now we are up to over 40 cases, which requires all of us to do some supervision of cases in order to be able to do the work that we do, because no supervisor should supervise more than 25 cases. And I try to keep that between 20 and 25, while the Texas CASA standards say you can go to 30. Giving new volunteers the help that they need when they have questions about things that might be happening in a case, or what are the outcomes, or what are the resources that they can get in touch with, just requires a little bit more time.
How long do volunteers work on cases typically?
We ask for a 1-year commitment because most cases in the state of Texas last 1 year. From the time that a child is removed, CPS and the courts are mandated to try and achieve permanency for that child within 1 year. Now, there is a stipulation that would allow them in extenuating circumstances to extend that for 6 months. But 18 months is sort of our drop dead time frame for finding permanency. And what we mean by finding permanency is that the child has a place that they will live from then on. And so whether that's to be reunified with the parents, which is the primary goal of all of the work that we do, or if they are to be placed with family members, relatives, friends or neighbors, or in some cases to be adopted by someone outside the family, that's always our goal, is to find permanency for these kids in a safe and stable environment.
Where do the children stay typically? I mean, I'm sure every case is different, but a year's a long time.
Yes.
It can be. So when you're looking for that permanency, where are they typically at?
Well, CPS has a placement unit called the CPU, Central Placing Unit, and they will find a place for the kids to stay. Now, if you can't find what we call fictive kin, and that fictive kin is defined as a relative, a family member, aunts, uncles, cousins, someone whose home could pass a home study and be a safe place for the children. That's primarily where we try to get kids placed to. And so CPS's responsibility to try and get that done. If they do not have or can't find a fictive kin or a relationship home that would allow the kids to be placed there, then they're placed in foster care. That might be a foster home. It occasionally is a shelter, and sometimes it's in what's called an RTC. a residential treatment center.
I see.
And so if some kids, their behaviors are such that they need a much more structured program with higher trained staff. And so that's when they end up in the RTCs.
So it sounds like when at all
possible, you try to keep them
with family.
Yes, there is a mandate at CPS that wherever possible, kids are to be placed with family and to be placed with their siblings, if that can happen too.
Mm-hmm.
So occasionally it doesn't for a lot of reasons, but most of the time we work hard to try and make sure that the kids stay with their siblings and with their family members.
Okay. Alan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, if I wanted to start volunteering for CASA, how would I go about getting involved with that? Do y'all have a Facebook page with contact information, or do y'all have phone number or website to be able to reach out to y'all?
We have all of the above. So we have a Facebook page that's CASA of Hill County, Texas. We have a website, which is www.casaofhillcountytexas.org. And our phone number at our office in Hillsboro is 254-283-5082. And you can just call us, or you can go onto our website, and there is a tab on there to volunteer, and you can just fill out the application. And when you fill out the application, we get notification of that. And then we will begin the process of reaching back out to you to talk about your interest in working as an advocate and starting the process of getting you through the background checks and the training in order to get you ready to be an advocate.
So Don, as a executive director, I'm sure when you came into the position, especially at such a, basically from inception, you had to have goals that you set for CASA, milestones that you wanted to complete. So my question is, where do you see CASA at in the next 5 years? What's your next goal? What are you trying to attain with it?
Well, when we first came on originally, I set a goal of having 30 volunteers serving on cases with a stretch goal of getting to 40 within my first 3 years of being in the program. We are 6 volunteers away from reaching that 40 mark. So we've been pretty tickled with that. But the other side of that is we will need eventually 50 to 60 volunteers in order to be able to take care of every child that has a case in Hill County.
Oh, wow.
And so that has always been our ultimate goal, is to serve 100% of the cases with 100% volunteers.
Interesting.
We could have staff working those cases. We'd much rather have volunteers doing that work because it speaks more to the fact that, first of all, that's their only case. Each volunteer has one case. Occasionally, they may take on a second one if they have the time, if they're retired, or their job will allow them to do two. But primarily, we have one case for one volunteer. That allows them to devote all of the time necessary to be able to get to know the kids, to understand their situation, to do the research necessary into the family, and to find, family members that might be a good placement for these kids, and try and help get those connections made in the process. So eventually I'll need, 50 to 60 volunteers in order to be able to do that.
Wow. So what determines what cases go to CASA? If there's sounds like there's still lots of cases out there that are, I guess, that CASA isn't handling. So what's kind of the criteria for that?
The judge decides which cases will be appointed to.
Hmm.
And so he and I work together, and I keep him informed of how many volunteers I have available. And as cases come across his desk, then he decides which ones he would like to have a CASA advocate on.
I see. Adam, anything coming to mind for you?
No. How many volunteers have you had since the beginning that are currently still volunteering with you?
Well, I was telling Justin earlier, we've had 35 volunteers, and 34 of those are still serving and on cases right now.
So pretty close to that 40 goal.
We're getting close to that 40 goal. That's true. So,
You think
and
you'll-
I would love to be able to do another class. We'll have another one. We just finished one in February. We have just sworn in 5 new advocates. We'll have another training class in May, and I would love to get 5 or 6, which would make my 40 goal, before the end of our fiscal year. So,
Well,
you were asked. Go ahead.
I was going to say, hopefully, with this process in this podcast, we can get some more volunteers to come to you to help out.
That would be awesome. You were asking a little bit about me earlier, and end up chasing rabbits down rabbit trails here and there. So, but my wife and I were foster parents for 12 years for CPS. And so we had 65 children through our home as foster children. And then she became the executive director for CASA of Ellis County about 15 years ago. And I volunteered for her for a number of years. And then when found out that they were looking for an executive director in Hill County, we had just moved to Hill County. We moved to Hill County in August of 2018. Found a nice little place that I thought I was going to retire to, but I was at a state convention, a Texas CASA convention, and found out they were looking for an executive director for the Hill County program. And I thought, that would be the only job that I would come out of retirement for. And so I applied, met with Greg Mason, Pat Herring, and several other members of what is now our board to interview with them. And I always tell people it had to be a God thing, because I found out about it on October the 28th, and Greg asked me if I could start work on November the 15th. And so in 2 weeks,
Wow.
I went from submitting an application to starting work. So
They knew you're the guy for the job right away.
yes. Well, and again, 15 years of working with my wife, I understood the grant process. I understood as a volunteer, what was involved in being a CASA advocate. And so it was pretty easy to step into the program here. And a lot of folks told us early on that, well, you may have a hard time finding volunteers. And that just hasn't been our case. People in Hill County have stepped up big time to provide volunteers that are willing to become advocates, to do fundraising for us, to serve on our board. A lot of different ways that the individuals in Hill County are stepping up to help us do this work.
Wow. Well, I'm really glad to hear that it's doing so well. Honestly, just the fact that we have so many volunteers in such a short amount of time, and I mean, you're right at that benchmark, right at that 40 mark. That's very impressive. That says a lot about the people of Hill County and your leadership to grow from nothing to almost 40 volunteers in such a short amount of time. So I mean, hats off to you. That's very impressive. And obviously you're helping people. That's what's most important about it.
Sure. And I think it's more of a testament to the folks in Hill County. They want to serve, they want to help, and they particularly want to help kids that are in foster care. So they're willing to invest the time that it takes to get the training. And we tell everybody the training is the toughest part of this whole process because it's 30 hours in 3 weeks. And so it does require a lot. Most cases will require an advocate 10 to 20 hours in their first month that they're on the case because there's a lot of reading and getting to know who the players are. But then it usually only takes about 5 to 10 hours a month after that as they continue to follow the case, keep track of the kids, where they are, how they're doing, and then prepare the reports back to the court to let the court know how they're doing and what the CASA's opinion is of what's in the best interest of the child. The CPS and CASA work very closely together, and most of the time we agree on what needs to be done as far as, what's in the best interest of the child, because that's also CPS's responsibility is to do what's in the best interest. But every once in a while, CPS gets caught in a policy or a procedure that won't allow them, while they may think it's in the best interest, they may not be able to advocate for that position. And there again, CASA volunteers are able to step up and say, I understand CPS's position, Judge, but we think it's in the best interest for this child to remain in this home or to go to this home. And that's just not something that CPS can advocate for.
I see.
So a lot of times CPS will have policies that say that if a home or a family member in the home had previous CPS history, regardless how far it may have been back, that home wouldn't qualify for them to send a child there. And a lot of times when we're in court, CPS will say, Judge, we can't advocate for that, but we certainly won't disagree with that placement that CASA is advocating for. So again, it's a policy that they get hung up on, and we don't have that. We are solely looking at what's in that child's best interest.
So say they can't advocate for it, but they don't disagree. That's a nice way around whatever loopholes they gotta jump through.
Yes, it is. And so, and of course, attorneys are always there and could advocate for the same things. But as I mentioned earlier, an attorney has the responsibility to advocate for what the child wants. And sometimes that's to stay with mom and dad, even if mom and dad may not be a safe place to live.
Okay. Adam, do you have any more questions right now?
I don't, not right now.
Okay. Don, do you have anything you want to add or anything that you want to touch on?
Well, we certainly are always looking for new volunteer advocates. We've talked about that a little bit, and I always want to hammer that home because that is what creates a CASA program. It is the volunteers that come and do this work and work with the kids. They're the ones who develop the relationships. They're the ones that really provide the benefits to this children. My staff and I, we provide support. I do mostly administration now that this thing has gotten bigger, but it is our volunteers who do the real work of, reaching out and working with these kids.
Phenomenal. So one more time, the best ways to get a hold of CASA, if you are interested in volunteering, what would you recommend? The website or just give the office a call? Or?
The website is the easiest way because it's there 24 hours a day. If you just go to www.casaofhillcountytexas.org, and it is a very long name because there is another CASA of Hill County program in Kansas, I believe. So we had to say Texas in order to identify us. But if you'll go onto that website, there is a tab on there where you can volunteer. And when you click on that, it will take you to our application and you can just fill that out. And we will get started on getting background checks and reference checks and getting you in for an interview and getting you started on your training.
Wonderful. And they can also find you on Facebook.
They can. We are on Facebook, and there will be links on the Facebook page back to our website page so that they can find us there. And they can always give us a call at the office. But again, we're only there 9 to 5. So the Facebook or the website are the best places to reach us.
Okay. Well, Don, I want to thank you again for taking your time to come talk with us today. I think this has been a terrific interview, and I hope you get some more volunteers out of this because CASA is doing great work for the community, for the county. So I appreciate everything you do.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always good to talk about CASA.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thanks, Don. From the chamber, we appreciate everything y'all do for you and your volunteers do for the family and the kiddos of Hill County. Y'all definitely make a positive impact on a daily basis.
well, thank you, Adam, again for the work that you guys do helping us promote CASA. And so we appreciate it.
Our pleasure. All right. Well, that wraps up this video. Thank you again, everyone, for listening and watching, depending on if you're on YouTube or on the podcast. And Don, thank you again sincerely. Appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.